Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Thank you for being here for this episode of The OT is In. Today I'm joined by Sarah Anderson, a seasoned occupational therapist with over a decade of experience. Sarah shares her journey through various practice areas, ultimately immersing herself in the mental health field, where she's discovered the crucial role that OTs play in addressing anxiety's multifaceted nature. Sarah and I unpack the complexities of anxiety, emphasizing the importance of understanding its root causes. She provides insights into how you, the parent, can detect anxiety patterns in your children and the significance of fostering environments that help kids to manage transitions and discomfort. We explore practical strategies to support your children, highlighting the value of emotional regulation, sensory processing, and fostering open communication about feelings and emotions. Join us as we tackle this nuanced world of anxiety and the empowering role that occupational therapy can play in enhancing mental health and well-being. Now, on with the show. Right. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In. My name is Sarah Collins, and I have another Sarah with me today, a fellow occupational therapist, and we have worked together. We were talking about this before we started recording. It was several years ago where we covered actually this same topic back when I was doing Facebook Lives. And Sarah was wonderful and met within our group because she's just such a wealth of knowledge on the field of occupational therapy and mental health. So Sarah, I'm just going to have you first go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how this became your area of expertise.
Yes. So, hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Anderson, and I've been an occupational therapist for just over a decade now. I have been in multiple areas of practice. I started out in home health, then I did a clinic. I was an OT at a school for the deaf, and then I transitioned truly into the mental health world right around that time. I found a part-time position at my alma mater as a faculty member. And then I also started working at an advocacy center for children who had experienced neglect and or abuse. And that's when I dived into the world of mental health and what OTs can do in this specific sector. And anxiety is such a tricky, interesting topic. Yeah. And so many people experience anxiety on an everyday basis. And we'll get into this, Sarah, but it's so interesting. So much of really being able to understand anxiety comes from what is the function of it and where is it coming from. And working as a mental health occupational therapist, I now have segued from academia. I was in academia for about 7 years full time. And then I recently went down and I adjunct and teach the mental health curriculum at Midwestern, but I own a group private practice in Scottsdale. And then my practice contracts with an addiction and mental health recovery center. And it's really interesting in terms of what OT specific role is in anxiety, but it is also just like such a function of like, where is it coming from? And I have some really unique stories in terms of working with clients who experienced a tremendous amount of anxiety and then figuring out like really where was that coming from. And I feel like that was a game changer in terms of reduction in anxiety, because anxiety is not always just anxiety or qualifies as an anxiety-based disorder, it can come from a variety of different places.
Yeah, let's break that down a little bit more. What do you mean
Yeah.
it can come from a variety of different
Yeah.
places?
So, anxiety is like a fear-based emotion. We have like physical signs of anxiety. We have sometimes like more of like the cognitive patterns we recognize as what can lead to anxious feelings in our body, like ruminating thoughts,
Mhm.
cognitive distortions, which are essentially thoughts that are like grounded fully in reality. Maybe there's some truth to it, but it's low amount of proportion a little bit. But anxiety can also be a sign of like obsessive compulsive disorder or tendencies.
Mhm.
Anxiety is also a really common thing that individuals who are neurodivergent experience. And if the anxiety is treated independent of the neurodivergence, we're really doing a disservice to people, because
Yeah.
that's a huge part of understanding why am I feeling anxious. And a lot of individuals who are neurodivergent, specifically people who are autistic and or have ADHD, it is sensory related. Same goes for obsessive compulsive disorder. For people who have obsessive compulsive tendencies, there's usually some sort of sensory processing component to it. And as an OT, when I get clients who come in and are feeling really anxious, it's not usually just like anxiety existing on its own. There's all sorts of other factors environmentally that are like coming into play that we really have to address.
So if a parent is saying, all right, my child is telling me that they're anxious, right?
Yes,
Which first of all, I if a child is telling you that they're feeling anxious, I want to commend you because they're understanding even what that word means.
yes.
But so how would a parent know how to even look at where is this coming from, or how would they find that support?
Totally. It takes time. It's
Yeah.
understanding patterns of when is the child becoming anxious? What does their anxiety look like? How does it manifest? And sometimes in kids, and especially like when we look at research, and this is not an end all be all thing, but a lot of females tend to internalize it. And sometimes it's hard to see it building up. But we're noticing, like, if I'm working with, say, an adolescent or even child, and it's like parents are telling me, like, transitions, they're having meltdowns, they're
Mhm.
telling me they don't want to go to school, they're telling me their tummy hurts, and then, like, they just can't calm down, and, or that is telling me, okay, we're looking at like transitions. Is it happening all the time? Is it happening after breaks from school or after vacations or right before a vacation ends?
Mhm.
Things like that tell me, let's investigate potential neurodivergence. And I am definitely someone who is a huge advocate for early detection. And because the way in which we work with the anxiety and the child really changes from this being a behavior that we want to fix and change versus how can we teach them how to prepare? How do we as parents better prepare our child for a transition? Helping them understand their unique neurocognitive differences so that there is more control or understanding of their anxiety, because anxiety is a fear-based emotion. So the more fear that builds up, the worse it gets. And the more control or understanding of our inherent lack of control, the more the anxiety decreases. Also, if I'm noticing, and like I have my 5-year-old was just diagnosed with ADHD and autism. She had low support needs. But one of the big reasons was I kept thinking like she's just a big feeler. She's a highly sensitive child. And one of my biggest referral sources is a large neuropsychiatric nurse NP practice. They're incredible. And the
Yeah.
owner was like, and this sounds silly, right? Because I work mostly now with adults who are late diagnosed, autistic, ADHD, very neurodivergent. And the thing that came out of my mouth, as soon as I said it, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. I'm like, but she's really social. And she's
Yeah.
Sarah. And I was like, that's such a good point. And it has changed the way we see her anxiety. But one of the biggest thing is every time we went to a public restroom, meltdown city. It was like, and so eventually we like pack with her sensory pack, noise canceling headphones. Automatic flushers need to just go away forever. Like
I'm telling you.
like on the board, like city planning to get rid of these automatic flushers. That's also, there's anxiety there.
Yeah.
However, if I address the anxiety separate from her neurodivergence, I potentially could do more harm as she gets older. And the one of the great best methods, like there's a variety of different methods that we can use when it comes to anxiety, things like more exposure based treatment, like systematic response or systematic desensitization. There we go. Wow. But doing it outside of understanding her unique sensory needs, again, like that's a huge part of her journey to feeling empowered so that she can live a meaningful life, be independent someday.
So can you give an example? Let's use the automatic flushers. What would that
Yeah.
look like if you were treating it without thinking of her neurodivergence? If you were just like going about it the other way?
Sure. I think I would be less prepared as a mom, understanding we're going to go to places that are sensory rich. And I would probably have more expectation that she would learn to independently cope outside of the co-regulation. I may just say, I wouldn't maybe look at noise canceling headphones as a lifetime long strategy for her. I inherently would get more frustrated by her behavior versus recognizing this is a unique part of her. And so there's that huge compassion. And most neurodivergent individuals live with a lot of anxiety because of the sensory triggers and stressors on top of masking all day and then just like losing it at the end of the day. But I also work with people who aren't necessarily neurodivergent and do have just more generalized anxiety. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's separate from the sensory component, but it's like figuring out, is the anxiety environment related? Is it thought related? One thing I think about as a mom, and I know other people that I have talked to, whether their child they have multiple kids, one has a chronic illness, or for us, we have one who has our youngest has super severe food allergies. And so egg and dairy is what my youngest is allergic to. My oldest is a very selective eater and loves egg and dairy. And so I'm very conscientious too of the way that we address the washing hands and being careful doesn't turn into an obsessive. The other part too is I feel like as parents, it's really easy to feel guilty about every little thing that we did or didn't do. And did this lead to this or that? And a lot of mental health stuff is highly genetic. And sometimes it is what happens. And I think parents need to know that there is help out there, there is support out there, but when it comes to anxiety, it's really figuring out like what is going on, what are the underlying factors for the anxiety.
Love this. So when a person is coming into your session and you're trying to work with them to figure out, okay, so what are some of these underlying, like where is this anxiety coming from? What questions would you be asking parents so that they know what to be prepared for?
Do you see a pattern? Is it always around the same time of day? Is it always around the end of a vacation, the start of a vacation, after a holiday break? Are you noticing patterns in the sensory components of wherever they are? Is it like one thing they perseverate on, or is it multiple things? Are they another thing that can often get missed? And I am very careful outside of kids are kids and they're developing. And I think pathologizing isn't always a great thing. Sometimes what parents will tell me is they ask me over and over questions. I've told them we're going somewhere and they'll like continuously repeat and ask. That is a self-regulatory behavior. That alone is not obsessive compulsive related, but it is more of an obsessive compulsive tendency to help foster this sense of regulation. I'm getting validation. And so that tells me, are we looking on a line of like OCD, but doesn't mean like obsessive compulsive disorder, but I'm seeing this tendency and it's helping me understand, okay, this is more of almost like a vocal stim for regulation. But again, it depends on the lens that you're looking through. Other things are, what are the reactions? Like, how is the anxiety manifesting? Are we noticing hair pulling, eyebrow pulling? Are we noticing? And again, that is
shirt chewing. I used to get my son used to do that all the time. Before we would be going.
And so again, anxiety is a part of life. Like when we go through transitions, we're going to feel it. When something really matters to us, we're going to go through it. And so as a parent, one of the best things I tell the parents I work with is helping your child tolerate the discomfort. Because when there is no tolerating discomfort, that's when they don't learn that at some point they can start to incorporate these strategies and learn how to handle it and deal with it without falling apart.
Before we keep going, I want to remind you of the purpose of Homeschool OT. The goal is to support you, the parent, so that you can then help your child be successful in what they need and want to do to occupy their time. This, occupy their time, is the true definition of occupational therapy. Homeschool OT was recently referred to as the search engine for when a child is struggling in their day-to-day life. This actually made me really happy. Now, part of this is because we all know how much time can be spent searching for answers, and some are often conflicting. So instead, we can work one-to-one together to discover the why, prioritize strategies, and implement them into your homeschool. So visit homeschoolot.com/services to see the range of options and get that personalized homeschool support that you need. Now, on with the show. So anxiety has become somewhat of a buzzword. You and I have talked about this before. There's this whole book on the anxious generation, and we're ascribing this to like an entire generation, right? There's also a difference in feelings and emotions, although here in America, we've put them all together. Emotions being the label based on the body's response, and feelings, how we harbor that or what we look like or how our body is doing this. It's interesting. I was listening to a seminar not too long ago by an autistic adult, and she was saying that people had ascribed her as anxious for a long time, when in actuality she was excited, but she was showing it in the same way. Yeah. And for us as parents, it's, I think, important for us to be able to look at what the body is doing and how it's telling us, like what's the feeling, as well as what our kids' words are. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about what the body does?
Yes. And so this is outside. So when we look at autistic individuals, sometimes it can be really different. So I will go into that after this little spiel. So when we look at how anxiety can manifest in the body, right? We're looking at heart rate increase, maybe chest feels really tight, throat feels like it's closing in, face could feel hot, hands may be shaky or wiggly like noodles, tummy feels funny, flip-floppy, like a snake's crawling in it. To be able to help your child label those feelings inside of their body, it's really important to figuring out what are they experiencing. This is tied to a term called interoception, your internal sense. And there are many individuals who struggle with interoception, mainly those who are autistic. And then not just those who are autistic, but other individuals can as well. And it's also, and alexithymia is the inability or having a hard time distinguishing your internal body sense. And so that alone can make it really tricky for a child to actually know what they're feeling, so that they can then communicate to a parent, and a parent can help figure out what's going on. There's lots of ways around that. So even say your child struggles to know what they're feeling or they avoid it, you can try playing with them and seeing if a character like a Barbie or a doll can communicate to you about, I wonder what Penelope is feeling. Other ways you can do it is having them draw a picture. You could have them do like a worry brain if they are more concrete and less connected to their body. That's the other part of individuals who are autistic and or have really low interoceptive awareness. Is sometimes my adults have told me, I feel like I'm a floating head. There's no connection to my body. And so intellectualizing is really easy for them, and it's hard to go internal. And so a worry brain, you could also do a body, like a drawn out body, and have them color in the parts of their body that feel affected to start to make sense. How does my child connect this feeling to their body? And then that, but usually even that, like anxiety or feeling fear or scared, right? The heart rate is going to typically increase. It's just some people have a hard time in that internal. Sometimes this can be really effective if you have like a smartwatch or even something that takes heart rate, and you think your child's feeling a certain way, have them look at it. And if they're old enough to be able to understand, they can start to feel like the beat of their heart in conjunction with the number is saying, and that can help connect for them. But it's trying to just use as many tools and giving them as many cues to start to learn, what am I feeling? And then how do I communicate, so you as a parent can help support them.
That's so great. And doing that inside, outside with activity, all of that, so you can start to learn that. I love picture books for the same thing, and talking about book characters. Again, that isn't internalizing into your body, but it is thinking, oh, what do you think whoever, Bluey or whoever, what picture book character, how do you think they're feeling? What does their body look like? Can we see in their face? looking at mirrors, that same type of
Hmm.
thing for putting together our faces with the emotion,
Yes.
naming the emotion and what our body is doing and feeling.
And I will say, I think one of the most powerful groups I've ever ran was a couple of weeks ago. And at the mental health addiction recovery center I work at, I primarily do groups for people who are neurodivergent. And we had this group where we were talking about anxiety and or like how you manifest emotions internally and what your stims are to release the emotion. And I had one client go, when I get really excited and I'm feeling happy, I rub my hands along my legs over and over. And another client goes, I thought you did that because you, and they were like, no,
That,
I feel
yeah.
so comfortable around you. I have this excited release. I have to. I had
Mhm.
another client that said when they were little, they used to dance and stim really hard when they were excited, but then they were trained to extinguish that behavior. Now,
Mhm.
as an adult, they struggle to feel the feeling of excited because there's this strong negative emotion or
Right.
association attached to it. I think as parents, especially, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, like it's just reminding ourselves to be really curious about what our kids are experiencing, because when we only come from our own lived experience, we're attaching our own emotions and our own ideas about things to what we already know and have experienced versus our children. And so again, it's just like you said, we're giving opportunity to explore and communicate inside, outside, community, all of those things is just, it's going to help them so much.
I love to use the term I notice or I see when I'm talking to my kids or to other clients of, oh, I notice your shoulders are hunched because that's what I'm seeing. That's not ascribing something or an emotion to it with them. Or I can see that you're breathing faster. If
Yeah.
we can point that out to our children, then maybe they're able to put that with the emotion that they're feeling.
Yes, 100%.
Great. All right. So once we get past we're labeling these emotions and stuff, I know that there's parents that are like, but I don't want my kid to feel anxious. I don't want that for
Mm-hmm.
them. What are some things that we can do as parents to help our kids through when they are feeling anxious?
Being like the total rock and not letting them know it bothers you,
Mhm.
because if they know that we can't tolerate their anxiety, they're going to learn not to tolerate it themselves. And I will say this, I think one of the most powerful things that we can do as parents is teaching our children to tolerate discomfort, because if we don't, they will turn to alternative means as they get older to extinguish that discomfort in unhealthy ways. And it's putting in that time and effort of like your child is struggling with anxiety going back to school, or like a change, whether say you're having a break in from your typical routine, like saying, I things seem like they're feeling harder for you, or I noticed that you're breathing faster, or help me understand, or sometimes depending on the age, it can be like, how can I support you? But knowing if they're feeling that way, like letting them feel it. And then also from when they're young to they get older is recognizing what types of things help reduce or bring comfort to the anxiety, whether it's fidgets or weighted products or a particular shirt or smells, or explore the whole gamut.
Yeah.
So many of us were not taught how to use our environment to our benefit to get through negative emotions, right? It's think
Mhm.
about this. I at the center, you would not believe how many people come in having been prescribed as if it were an SSRI, like a benzo, for
Uh,
12 years. And then coming off of something like that, the world just constantly, for a lack of a better world, almost like it's so harsh
yeah.
every single day because you've been shut down for 12 years.
There was just an
But
article. I get the newspaper because that's all the news
yeah,
I can handle a week. And there was just
yeah.
an article the other day in the Wall Street Journal all about benzos and coming adults like coming off of and how hard that is on the brain and the body.
Oh my goodness. And their
Mhm.
sensory processing
Mhm.
sensitivity and avoidance patterns are off the charts. But those individuals, yes, have experienced substantial trauma or felt really anxious when they were younger. And then for whatever reason, were prescribed it every single day. And the lack of, or the inability to feel that discomfort and learn how to tolerate it, that's what they missed out. And but it does shut you down, it does
Yeah.
help, but that's not what the human experience is about. And it is see them anxious, and if you are also neurodivergent in any way under that to see your child, if they get dysregulated vocally and you have auditory sensitivities. And so I think If you are noticing your child having a lot of anxiety and you feel like you are struggling as a parent to know how to adequately support them because you have maybe some of your own differences and
Yeah.
things going on, there are providers out there who can support the whole family. And I think that's one of the best gifts we can give our children is to do that and to really learn about ourselves so we can meet their needs.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. How would you, or how do families go about finding that? Because as much as I'm like, yes, build your team, and I talk about that frequently
Mm-hmm.
here on the OT is in podcast about making sure that we homeschooling is not alone schooling, making sure that we are
No.
building our teams of the people to support us. But I don't know, is that really frequent that we can find someone to support the whole
Mm-hmm.
family?
It's hard.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have to, unfortunately, like sometimes it's like having a few providers that weren't great and ending it
Mhm.
right away. Here's my best piece of advice for any family. And I tell every family I serve this. If I am not the right fit for you, or you feel at any time this isn't working, you tell me,
Mhm.
because that is important to be able to have that communication with the provider. And so I would say have that upfront conversation right away. Anytime you start therapy, I just want to let you know that you likely might be a really great provider, but we really need open conversation if this isn't working. I think using resources like you, Sarah, where
Yeah.
you have connection to a variety of people that kind of have been vetted and can connect with families, it is really hard. I
Mhm.
am, as I know right now, I think one of two mental health OTs in the state in private practice, and I'm in
Yeah.
Arizona. The other one is full and only does like home services. And so essentially we're like the only practice with a clinic. And we are only private pay. I tried to go through insurance. That didn't go very well. The reimbursement rates were just like not livable. And that's like a whole nother topic. But so there is that pragmatic part too, that there is privilege in being able to
Mhm.
afford services. And so I think it's like connection or doing homeschooling, really lean into that. It's not alone. Share resources. I know in Arizona, we are developing a pretty strong like neurodivergence, like collective amongst therapists. And I have my people I trust and would send
Yeah.
people to and feel so comfortable. And so it's like when you find one provider that's really good, chances they can put you in connection with the others. There's one practice in particular that's more of a psychiatric practice that many, here's a great example, autistic women are misdiagnosed with
Yeah.
borderline and bipolar disorder. We call it alphabet soup. And then all of a sudden I'm working with them and in my head I'm like, oh, how has this been missed for so long? We've
Yeah.
got significant sensory sensitivities. We've got sensitivity to rejection, like all of these things. And then they get this, and then I send them to this particular place because I know they see through not just an anxiety lens, but the neurodivergence lens, a trauma
Mhm.
lens. And it is getting connected with one right provider.
Right.
And then they can help you find supports in other areas if that's what you need. Don't lose hope. I do
Yeah.
think social media, this is one of the benefits of social media is the ease of connection to find other providers. There's lots of downfalls to social media, but I do think the ease of connection is really wonderful.
And what does a OT and mental health session look like? So if a
Yeah.
parent is, hey, I think I might have found someone, like what is something that they could expect to happen when they
Yeah.
come in?
Yeah. So first session is pretty much like an eval. In our practice, we specialize in executive functioning and the sensory processing as they relate to everyday engagement in life. Anxiety is always looked at through the whole process because usually that's part of what they're experiencing. And we do like a sensory profile and then we do functional based assessments of executive functioning because most of our clients are neurodivergent and won't meet neurotypical norms
Mhm.
anyways. And then we get a treatment plan and we figure out like what are the big goals. So for my
Yeah.
kids, it's family focused, right? It's transitions are easier, maybe fostering communication when they're starting to feel anxious or feel a big feeling so that they don't melt down and fight with a sibling or something like that. It's very like the
Mhm.
nitty gritty home stuff. And so in our practice, and this is probably similar for some who have a similar sensory processing model versus sensory integration. Our group room space looks just like a living room. And so we do all our family sessions in that space. So the whole family participates. We're
Mhm.
playing games. We are maybe like going through like emotion charts, just like they would at home. I am not taking the child back It is the whole family. And that's actually a conversation I
Beautiful.
have before we take a child. It is family focused therapy for the support of the child. But if you sensory integration, I understand because of the equipment and things like, but
Mm-hmm.
if you are truly needing support for your family, I highly recommend working with a mental health OT and or more of a child focused therapist who uses a family system model.
Beautiful. Now, I'm actually giggling because there's several people that'll say, you know what, I can tell you everything that I should do in the moment. And I can
Yeah,
say, I shouldn't be acting in this, I shouldn't hit someone, I shouldn't do that. So many things that we
yeah,
quote unquote shouldn't do in the
yeah,
moment. And I can tell you all of those, but when it's
yeah,
happening, I can't stop it.
yeah,
And that so many parents are coming with this issue of how do we connect that of what I should do and actually making that happen. Is that something that you guys work
yeah.
on? And
Yes.
how?
Yeah. So say like there's like an adolescent or teen who's I know I
Mhm.
shouldn't hit or act out, but I
Yep.
just can't help myself. It's that middle ground of right, like finding like where are you on the emotional
Hmm.
spectrum of getting to some more hot before you're blazing.
Yeah.
And it's like recognizing if you feel the need to scream or yell, it's like an opposite action of
Hmm.
I need space. I'm going to give myself space to cool down. We have to build a culture where we are accepting of these more uncomfortable emotions. So when they are alone, they aren't festering in shame.
Yeah.
And we're not leaving our kids alone. I know it's kind of, I've seen a lot on social media like co regulation all the time. Don't put your kids in their room. Guess what? Some kids actually want to be alone and
Yeah.
need to be alone to process through stuff. But at the end of the day, you are there outside the door ready when they are ready. And then you talk through it. Do not talk through anxiety in the midst of feeling
In the midst
anxious
of
because
anxiety. Right.
no, because their
Yeah.
frontal lobe is shut down and
Yep.
they're in their limbic system, their emotional brain, and it's just not going to work. And again, I think also recognizing there is progress in the little stuff. So, say child still acts out, but then they're able to reflect and say, I
Hmm.
recognize I should have X, Y, and Z. And that's still progress. And really not disconnecting from your child when they're doing it because it's really hard. And I think having their room set up to meet their own unique needs. I want you to think about like the lighting, the fabrics, the colors, the clutter, ways of
Yes.
access to regulating tools, exploring like music that can help them calm down, coloring, diamond art, like all of the things, use all of the tools so they can learn feeling this way is okay. It's the behavior that isn't as acceptable, but you are okay feeling this way. I have a
Hmm.
lot of clients that will come to me and their goal is, I don't want to feel this emotion so intensely. And part of it is you are wired to intensely feel. That is not a
Hmm.
realistic goal. And also, there's probably a lot of shame tied to that.
Yeah.
How about we focus on like the action part and getting you to a place where you can feel empowered to find
Yeah.
control in yourself versus acting out.
So you still have the emotion. It's not getting over the emotion, it's getting
No,
through the emotion.
totally.
There's just such a big difference even in that language of I remember when I was little and someone being like, get over it, get over it. No, that's not the point, but it's really to work ourselves through it so that our behaviors and how we're acting and treating and coping can grow and change.
That's it. It's all about the
Mhm.
growth, right?
Mhm.
It's not about the end result, it's
Right.
about the journey to get there.
Oh, such a good thing to end on. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of this and for talking through anxiety with us. I know it's such a hot topic for kiddos who are little all the way up through teens and into adults and
Mm-hmm.
us as parents as well. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yes. So my Instagram is at elevated wellbeing, OT, wellbeing is one word. I'm also on TikTok for those of you who are able to be on it and manage it. Dr. Sarah Anderson with an underscore. And then our website is www.elevatedwellbeingot.com.
Beautiful. And I will make sure that all of that is linked in the show notes. Guys, we've talked a lot about interoception during this. There are 3 previous episodes on interoception that I'll make sure are linked. And we've also talked about where to find occupational therapy and what it's for. And I'll make sure that's linked here in the show notes as well. So thank you, Sarah, so much for being here.
Thank you, Sarah.
So, if you joined us in episode 59, you got to hear the very beginning of our new picture book called A Chameleon Tale. And I am so excited to give you the next 9 pages or so and continue to tune in through the rest of this month to hear more. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you get to see these beautiful illustrations by my co-author, Jackie Adrian. If not, I'll try to give you a description right at the beginning. You can see the two chameleons, Mama, on Seth here. She is wrapping him in a leaf cocoon of sorts to help to calm him down. She says, Mama knows just what to do for Seth. She offers his body deep pressure with her own body and directs him to a tight leaf wrap. When his body starts to calm with relief, she explains each step of the plan. In 5 minutes, we will feel the rough bark on your feet as we climb to taste the salty bug. Now, this is called declarative language. The next page. Seth, now calm, turns a beautiful gold color, which shows he's now soothed. Mama declares, I notice your color is gold just in time to crawl. Seth, you knew just what to do. Then you can see Sally in her beautiful coral color with her tongue sticking out and just these music notes coming out of her mouth. Mama with a smile on her face and Seth looking on, both gold. Although Seth is now calm like his mom, Sally is turning coral. The waiting and holding her body still is difficult for her. She begins to spin wildly on her tail and sing loudly. Mama smiles, knowing Sally is meeting her needs with movement. Sally climbs, bustling between tree branches as the others begin to walk, and Sally begins to turn to gold. Mama says, I notice your color is gold, just in time to stroll. Sally, you knew just what to do. Now, these are great times for you to discuss with your children about what they notice with themselves when they need to be gold or when they are free to move between coral and teal, because we do not all always need to be calm and gold. However, there are certain environmental expectations. So these are great conversations to have with your kids. When do you think that we need to stay gold? How does it help to get our bodies in that way? Would the leaf wrap help you like it would help with Seth? How about jumping and singing, crawling, moving all around? Would that help you like it does with Sally? These are the conversations to begin to have with your children. You can find out more about A Chameleon Tale at homeschoolot.com, where we will email you out as soon as we know everything about publication date and where and when you can order. So be sure to check in at homeschoolot.com.